Hello there guys, welcome back to another video. Now we're back working on the N62 powered BMW 650i. Before we get into things today, do me a massive favour, hit that thumbs up button. It really does help me out and it shows your appreciation. Now then, let's get right into things. Exactly what are we going to be doing in this video? So we're going to be swapping out a couple of seals. Now we're going to be swapping out the alternator bracket seal along with a couple of O-rings as well. Now you may be asking, why am I swapping this out? Do I have a huge oil leak? And the answer to that is, well, I'm swapping it out purely for preventative maintenance. I don't have any known oil leaks. I did take this car on a 4,000 mile trip and I didn't appear to lose any oil. So yeah, I'm just swapping these seals out because I know they are a very high failure point. The car has covered 102,000 miles now, I think. So chances are it's probably still on the original seals and it's only a matter of time before they do leak. Now you may be thinking, well, it's probably a pretty quick job, isn't it? Just to swap out one gasket and a couple of O-rings. No, it's not a simple job. It's quite a complex job actually, especially on these N62 powered engines. There's quite a lot to remove. It may involve also jacking up the engine and removing one of the engine mounts. I'm undecided as to which approach I'm going to go with yet, but of course once we get into things, that's when I'll figure out which way I'm deciding to do things, but I'm sure we're going to get it done nonetheless. Now the gasket and the O-rings that I am going to be installing are both genuine BMW and they are from a company called Turner Motorsport over in the US. Now Turner Motorsport also sent me out a bunch of other parts as well, which I'm also going to be installing onto the car in due course. We have things like some antifreeze, we have a thermostat, we have a water pump, we have pulleys and various other little bits and pieces as well. Now the good thing about Turner Motorsport is they supply both genuine BMW and genuine OEM parts. So let's take this water pump for example. This is a Soleri water pump. This is what BMW used from factory on these cars. However, they will just add their BMW logo to it. And so if you buy the genuine OEM part, you are essentially getting the genuine BMW part just at a discounted price. And so if you do want to check out Turner Motorsport, maybe you want to get yourself some parts, I'll leave all of the details down in that description box below. I'll also leave a direct link where you can get yourself the alternator bracket gasket and both of the O-rings for the oil cooler lines as well. Okay then, so let's get straight into things. So to begin with, I'm just going to work up the top. I'm going to give myself as much access as possible to get down to that alternator bracket. We will have to, of course, get the car up in the air, get underneath to gain access to it itself, but I want to give as much light and as much access from the top. So I'm going to get the airbox removed, the air intake pipe, and the main engine cover as well removed. So first we'll disconnect the mass airflow sensor. Just have to pry up these clips. It goes over the cover. And we can get that unplugged. Just undo this Jubilee clamp here. There should be just two T30 bolts holding the airbox in place. Both of those removed. And now I'm going to remove the 4 nuts that hold the main engine cover in place. So just 10mm nuts. Retrieve all those before they get dropped down into the abyss. And the main engine cover can just lift right off. We can now access the Jubilee clamp that clamps the intake pipe onto the throttle body. See if we can just pull this off. There we are. And the airbox should come out along with it actually. Once we just push this clip in. There we are. And now with the air intake all removed, we have much more room for activities at the top. So we can remove the drive belt. To remove the drive belt, we just need to insert a T60 socket into the slot on the automatic tensioner, just down there. Insert that, rotate it clockwise, the tension will come off the belt, and we can just slip it off. Then we need to remove the belt because we have to, of course, remove the alternator and get that out of the way. And as you can see, drive belt is now removed. It's time to head underneath the car. Okay, so coming underneath the car then, just got the car up on a set of ramps. A load of people ask me about these ramps, by the way. They're always linked in the description of every video. They seem to work quite well, and yeah, very easy to get the car up in the air. But I've actually noticed something. So I said there was no known oil leaks on this car, and I've just driven 4,000 miles or so and it hasn't used any oil. Well, I've actually just noticed this, and yeah, that looks like oil to me, and this is like pretty much exactly where the alternator bracket is located. So could it be a coincidence that we're swapping this out and we actually find that we do have a leak? I don't know, but yeah, let's get the front under tray removed anyway. It's just held in by a bunch of Phillips screws. Just need to undo those, and then we can get this under tray off then. Well, what do you know? It appears the alternator bracket is leaking. Yeah, very easy to spot up there. You can see the oil is all accumulated around the alternator bracket, and it's stripped down onto the subframe, and then that's stripped down then onto this under tray. So now that we have this under tray removed, I'm thinking I may need to remove this under tray. I'm thinking I may need to remove this under tray. I think I am going to have to. I mean, I could potentially like maybe get up there and remove it, but I think just to give myself as best access as possible, surely it just makes sense to remove this under tray as well. I know it's like a bit of a pain, but it's just a bunch of 8mm hex head screws, so I'll get all those removed and get this pan dropped as well. Right, yeah, so removing that other under tray hasn't really given us much access. The subframe's kind of in the way. I mean, I may have to remove this splash shield as well, which goes around the steering rack. I'll wait and see for that though. For now, let's focus on getting the alternator out. So the alternator, I think it's held in by 3 13mm hex head bolts. I can't quite see all of them. Set one definitely there. I think there's one a bit further up, and then maybe one at the back. I'm not entirely sure yet, but let's be realistic. The alternator obviously needs to come out of this gap here. It's not going to do that with the power steering pump there, and it's not going to do that with the sway bar there either. So I'm going to remove the anti-roll bar, the sway bar, just held in by a 13mm nut and a 13mm bolt. Remove those on either side. I'll also need to disconnect this bracket as well. Looks like a 10mm bolt. That'll swing out of the way. The whole anti-roll bar then should swing down. It'll be supported by the drop links. That'll create a little bit of space, and then I need to unbolt the power steering pump as well, and hopefully that can either move this way or drop down and just create a much bigger opening for the alternator to drop out of. So yeah, that's the anti-roll bar now unbolted and out of the way. Much bigger opening here now. Just need to figure out how many bolts are on this power steering pump, and like I said, we should have enough movement on this hose just to be able to manipulate that out of the way. So as you can see, we have the power steering pump drop down now. Very easy to remove this. Literally just a nut, 13mm nut sits there. Remove that, and then again 13mm bolt that goes through to the back. It goes through the alternator bracket itself right there, Like I said, once you've removed those two, you can just drop this down now, and we should, in theory, have enough access to get the alternator out now. Now the alternator itself just looks like two 16mm bolts, one there and then one there at the top. Now of course we will have the electrical connectors, however though it's a bit tight, so what I'm hoping is once I've unbolted this I'll be able to sort of move this down, be able to sort of angle the alternator down and then be able to get to the back where the electrical connectors are. Obviously need to make sure not to pull it too hard, I don't want to end up snapping anything, but yeah, just going to remove those two bolts now and see if we have any movement. So one bolt removed so far, so we'll remove the last one. Is that removed? Is it loose? No, it's not yet loose. Oh, here it is. Then I'm going to get the automatic tensioner out of the way, because as I'm trying to push it up, it is kind of getting caught on that. So I'll remove the automatic tensioner now. And there's that removed, and I may have a slight bit more wiggle room. Oh, I think she's just coming this way. Oh, it's quite heavy. That's the alternator out. Probably just as well that we are doing this job now, because yeah, the alternator's kind of covered in oil, so oil on the alternator, probably not the best thing, is it? But yeah, alternator now removed, we should have pretty good access to the alternator bracket now. Now with the alternator out of the way, next thing I'm going to do is remove the oil thermostat, and it should just be held in by two T30 bolts, one there and then one just there. I'll release them. This whole thing hopefully should then come away and give us enough clearance to get on to the engine mount bracket, which is this thing just there. Obviously sits on top of the engine mount, but it also bolts through the alternator bracket, which then of course goes through onto the engine block. So have the oil thermostat itself removed, fully removed from the car. That's the two main O-rings that I planned on replacing. However, I'm also going to have to replace these two smaller O-rings as well. Ended up having to remove the 6mm Allen bolt which held the oil lines in place to the oil thermostat, pushed that over slightly, and then it gave me the access to remove that thermostat itself. Luckily for me, I did have a couple of these O-rings lying around, so it's not a problem, I can swap them out, no issues. But yeah, now with that thermostat removed, we should hopefully be able to get onto all of the engine mount bracket bolts. So this is the situation now then. Obviously we're going to have to take the weight off of the engine, because we need to get the engine mount itself unbolted from the engine. So just down here we have a nut. I'm going to guess it's a 15 or 16mm nut. I'm going to unbolt that, and at which point this engine brace should be supporting the engine then. Obviously it goes through onto the lifting eye there, which bolts directly to one of the cylinder heads. This isn't taking the whole weight of the engine. It could take the whole weight of the engine, but it's not. It's literally just going to be a supporting one side. Obviously you still have that side engine mount in place, and you still have it bolted to the transmission or whatever. If you don't have one of these, you could jack up the engine either, you know, somewhere safe underneath the engine, or you could also jack up the transmission. If you are jacking up the transmission though, don't do it directly on the transmission oil pan, because it is plastic and you will end up cracking it. So yeah, maybe on the bell housing or something like that, should be fine to jack it up on that. But if you do have one of these, obviously a lot safer to do it this way. Okay, so that 16mm nut has now been removed. Just get yourself an assortment of extensions to get down in there, and then just retrieve it with a magnet if you have one. So with any luck, if we wind this up, the engine should now lift off of that engine mount. He says. Looks like it is moving. Yeah, it's definitely lifting now. Obviously we don't have a huge amount of clearance on the bulkhead. It's only going to go another 5mm or so. Yeah, I think I can work with that. It's basically off it now. So if you have a look down there, you can see the thread is all the way through that engine mount bracket now. And now we are getting pretty close to getting that alternator bracket removed. So fairly confident now I have access to all 4 bolts. Made it easier to get this oil cooler double line unbolted from the cylinder head. It's held in by 2 E8 Torx bolts. It was an absolute pain to get on them, but they basically go through the front timing cover. I've removed those, and yeah, as you can see, this now has a lot more movement, so that is out of the way. And I've actually managed to remove those 2 E12 bolts at the front, which hold the engine mount bracket in place. And now to access the rear ones, I've basically gone through the wheel arch liner. So there's this small trim piece here. It's kind of a cowling that goes over the steering rack, just held in by 3 8mm hex head screws. So remove them. This can all then pull off, and yeah, should have a pretty straight run on those 2 bolts now. So I'll get those 2 bolts removed, and then that engine mount bracket should come away, and then I think there's just 2 or 3 more bolts holding the alternator bracket in place then. So for the alternator bracket itself, there was 1 16mm hex head bolt at the back, which I've already removed, and now it should just be 2 13mm bolts. There's 1 at the front, and then there's 1 sort of in the middle. That's the middle one removed, and then this 1 at the front, and that should be it then loose. There's a longer 1 at the front. That's got it. Right. T45 bolt. Like I said, it's a very strange place to have a T45 bolt, but hey ho. Is it now loose? It still doesn't feel loose. I was wrong, there is in fact yet another bolt. Looks like another 13mm. Let's get that removed, and then it should just be loose then. And with this final bolt removed, that thing should finally come out. Hurrah! It's loose. It's held in by a dowel though. Oh, no, we got it. There it is. That's the offending article. And so remove this, you'll probably notice it'll be very, very hard and brittle. And once that happens, it can no longer sufficiently keep the oil in and creates a huge leak. Crazy how I didn't notice this leak though while I was on the big Europe trip, unless it literally happened as I got back. So I was checking the oil level and it didn't go down, unless it was, you know, just a very, very tiny leak. But yeah, definitely needs doing for sure. Yeah, seal removed. This thing is so, it's definitely not the worst one I've seen, but it is very, very hard now. It's basically like plastic at this point. And this happens because of the constant heating and cooling cycles. These engines in general, they do run very warm, so, which I guess is a good thing for emissions, and you know, you get good fuel economy for, you know, the size of the engine. But yeah, things like seals and plastic parts, they obviously don't like it. But yeah, it is what it is. We are in here now. We are swapping this out, along with the oil cooler line O-rings as well. Okay then, so I've gave the alternator bracket itself a bit of a clean up, and I've went ahead and got the new gasket installed. That's sitting perfectly in there now. Also gave the oil thermostat a bit of a clean up along with the engine bracket as well. Nice to put nice clean parts back onto the car rather than parts that are just completely covered in oil. Also gave the mating surface a good clean as well. I'm going to give the whole entire underside of this car a good deep clean eventually, but for now I'm just, like I said, I've just cleaned up the mating surface. I'll get that engine, I'll get that alternator bracket put back in place, and I'll get everything else plumbed back into it. But yeah, let's get this bracket back in place and let's get everything put back together. It's basically just going to be the exact opposite of removal. Should be a bit easier though, because we now know exactly which bolt we need to remove, socket sizes and all the rest of it. So yeah, just going to crack on. I'll check back in when I'm done. So alternator bracket now back in place. You're probably wondering torque specs for the 5 bolts. So all of the M8 bolts, that's the 3 13mm hex head bolts, and the Torx 45 bolt at the top, they're to be torqued down to just 21 newton meters, and then the M10 bolt at the back, the 16mm hex head bolt, that's to be torqued down to 38 newton meters. It's very important, do not over tighten these. There's a good chance before the bolts themselves snap, you'll either end up cracking this because this is aluminium, or you'll do some damage to the block, which is again aluminium. So yeah, don't over tighten these. They do not have to be very tight at all. But with that now back on, I'm going to get the engine mount bracket back in place, and again I'm going to torque down those M10 bolts to 38 newton meters as well. And with the engine mount bracket now reinstalled, all 4 bolts torqued down, we can get the new O-rings onto the oil thermostat. And there is 2 new O-rings, nice and lubed up. So now we can get this bolted back up to the alternator bracket itself. Right, so oil thermostat back in place. I've torqued down the 2 M6 bolts to just 10 newton meters, and now I can get the cooler lines reattached. We'll see, I'll install the 2 new O-rings, and then I'll torque down the M8 bolt down to 22 newton meters. And there we go then, oil cooler lines now bolted back to that oil thermostat. I've also bolted the oil cooler line brackets back to the front timing cover. So now I can get the alternator reinstalled, get the power steering pump reinstalled, and then yeah, everything can go back. Oh, I've also reinstalled the nut on the engine mount as well, so that's already good to go. Yeah, should just be plain sailing now. he says. And just like that, we are all now back together. Alternator back on, secured by the 2 bolts. Power steering pump back on, secured by 1 bolt and a nut. The automatic belt tensioner, that's back in place, and obviously the belt itself is back on as well. I have fired the engine up just to check for any leaks. Cannot see any dripping whatsoever from that whole general area, so that is great news. Now, of course, we do have to put the covers back, main engine cover, front air intake and the airbox as well. However, I am going to leave that though, because I do have a couple more jobs to do. I won't be doing that in this video though, but maybe you'll see that in a future video. But yeah, as I mentioned, still have a bunch of parts to swap out on this engine. I'm going to be doing the belts, the pulleys, going to be doing a full power steering fluid flush and a bunch of other little jobs as well. But yeah, job has been successful. Now, definitely hasn't been easy. It's not been too bad because I've kind of done the job before. Like I said, on my V12 Bmw 760 Li, which is just there, but it is fiddly and it is time consuming. You can see why, you know, shops or garages, they charge upwards of, you know, £1,000 just in labour. I mean, like I said, the parts themselves, the seals, they are what, probably less than £10, but yeah, to access them, to remove everything you need to remove, to get the engine jacked up, it's not a quick 5-minute job. I've actually done this over a good couple of days. So yeah, if you are attempting to do this yourself, take your time, make sure you have enough time to do it. Don't do this like and expect that you're going to be able to drive the car away the same day. You may get it done in a day, but it's not one of those things you want to rush. You don't want to end up rounding bolts or, you know, stripping out threads or anything like that. But yeah, we got there in the end anyway. Hopefully this video has been helpful. Hopefully you've all enjoyed it. Remember to give this video a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe if you have not already done so, and I will see you all in that next one.